Hi everyone, it's Kelly from the Hub, here today with our friend Angela from the Domestic Violence Services over at CAP, and she brought a friend too, so we'll have to meet her and see what's going on. Good morning, Angela.
Good morning, Kelly. How are you?
I'm doing all right today. I'm doing all right.
Good.
All right. So you brought a friend.
Yes,
Introduce.
I have my friend and coworker Deb here with me. Deb coordinates our children's program at the Safe House. And so today's topic is about how domestic violence impacts children and maybe some things that we can all do to help support children who are experiencing domestic violence.
That's awesome. We've talked about, oh, hello, Deb. Sorry, I didn't even say hello. Hello, how are you?
Hello, good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Good
I'm doing
morning.
well. How are you?
Excellent. So we've talked about kids before, sort of as bystanders in this whole stuff. So I'm really looking forward to, talking about, how do you address the issues of those kids and how is their behavior and what, they're certainly experiencing trauma too by watching someone in their family have these things happen to them. So this is going to be really interesting. So when you have people who are at the Safe House and they bring their kids, how do you even start with those kids?
Okay. Well, first, can I back up a minute and talk about the children and their, and you talked about them as being bystanders. And I just want to talk about that a minute.
Of course.
Lots of times in the research, children have been referred to as witnesses, and bystanders is another term. And I think it's important to realize that when we think about bystanders or witnesses, we kind of think of somebody on the sidelines observing what's happening, but rather than being a part of that whole experience. And I think when we talk about children and domestic violence, we need to realize that they're part of a family system and they're living in this household. And so the impacts really are much deeper than, it certainly can be traumatic for a bystander to witness, say, an incident of community violence, but that's very different from a family member, like a child, living in the household where domestic violence is occurring. Even if they aren't directly physically assaulted themselves in that family, we know from research that the impacts on children of witnessing or of seeing domestic violence actually are more severe than when a child is directly assaulted. So the impacts of being a part of a domestic violence family and growing up with that are really deep and pervasive.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's very good information to know. Okay, so the family comes in, the victim and in your safe house, it happens to be women, so, and her children are there. So what do you say to them? How do you start? I think that might be the hardest thing. I think, once you can figure out what is affecting them, then you can, go down that path. But
right.
You start with, hey, everybody.
We start with, hey, welcome.
Yeah.
We're glad you're here and you're safe here. And we actually, for our children at the Safe House, one of the things we do with new children coming in is we share letters that our children have written, the children that are already staying with us at some point in our curriculum, where we talk about empathy. They write a letter to new children coming in, welcoming them and telling them about the experience that they've had. And so the children share from their own hearts different things. They may say things like, don't be afraid. I was afraid when I first came here, but this is a safe place. And you'll have fun here. And you'll learn things too. So these are the kinds of things that the children share with the other children. So we welcome them as a staff and our volunteers, of course, but we're also introducing them to the other children. We're sharing this information that the other children have written to welcome the newcomers also. And then we talk to them. We have to, we have to tell them a little bit. We want them to know what to expect. So we talk to them a little bit about what happens in the children's, we call it the children's wing. That's our children's area. So the first time they come down to the children's wing, we show mom and the children through and talk about through the area so they get to see the place and they know where mom is while they're there. And they get to meet everybody and we talk about what we do while we're there. So every night we have a routine and the children come and they have some free play time. And then we have some time where we do we have a psychoeducational trauma-informed curriculum that we've developed and we use with the children. So they each go into age-appropriate groups. We have 3 groups typically. We'll have our teens, our elementary, and then our little preschoolers, our little guys and girls. And we have little lessons that are about various topics. Everything from domestic violence. We talk to the children about domestic violence. We define it. We talk to them about how to stay safe. We let them know that it's never the children's fault. Children often feel responsible for what's happened. And so we address domestic violence as well as other things like feelings. We spend a lot of time on teaching emotion regulation skills that they can use in their own lives to help them to calm down and manage the big feelings. So we tell the children a little bit about what we do. We usually use children's books to introduce the topic each night. And we have other fun activities. We have crafts and we have games and age-appropriate fun activities that our lessons are short by design, and so they have fun things that they can do then that kind of support and reinforce the learning. And then after that, they usually have free play time. And then cleanup time, then mom comes back down. So they know, and this helps them to feel safe, emotionally safe. They know who's going to be there. We have a consistent staff. We do have volunteers sometimes who change, but there's a core consistent staff. They know what the routine is. They know what the expectations are while they're there. So all of those things help them to feel safe with us, which is very important in helping children.
That's absolutely fantastic. And how do the kids do? How do they fare through this process? I'm sure that varies, but can you see their growth? Can you see how, if they calm themselves or, however, can you see that?
Yeah, so there's different ways that we do see change. One would be in just, what we observe. We certainly see improvements in the children. We also hear them using some of the language that we use when we teach them. So one of our lessons, for example, is on empathy, and we use the Fill a Bucket book that is used a lot of times in many schools. You might be familiar with that. And so they learn about how when you do something nice for somebody, you're filling their bucket. And if you do something not so nice, you might be taking something out of the bucket. And so we hear the children use that language sometimes, and language from other lessons as well. So that helps us to know that they really are learning some of what we're trying to teach them and share with them. We see it in throughout the Safe House too, not just in the children's wing. We'll see them, we'll hear the way they talk, and we'll see the behaviors, the management skills that they'll use. And so we know that they're learning and integrating some of those things into their lives. We've also used evaluation tools for more quantitative measures. So we had an evidence-based tool that we used for a year or so just to try to track the effectiveness of our program. And we definitely saw an improvement in children's, not just their behavior, but how they feel and how they get along with others. These are all areas that are impacted by domestic violence. So we saw improvement in all those areas in a significant, to a significant degree. So that helped us to know also that we were on the right path in the work that we were doing, helping the children. And we also work with the mothers, the parents, mothers or fathers. And we talk to the mothers also about how to help their children, and also helping themselves heal and helping to restore the bond. The parent-child bond has often been affected by the domestic violence. And so, there's a lot of healing that needs to take place in the family, in the victim parent, in the parent-child bond, and in the children. And so we try to work with everybody to help to promote their ability to heal from their experiences.
I think if I can tag on to that, I really, I love talking about our children's program, because when we talk about trauma and domestic violence as a form of trauma, everything that we're doing is trauma informed. And it's also contributing to their emotional regulation, their social skills development. And this is consistent across what a lot of schools are also doing. You know, you probably have heard, you know, the social emotional learning, and that kids need to really learn those social emotional skills before they can even be educated, right? Before they can learn their lessons. And so we know that school districts are stepping up and are doing a lot more to help kids understand that and develop those skills. And so it's very much a continuum. You know, I'll go to a meeting and maybe talk with somebody who's doing this or that, and I come back and I'm like, Deb, did you know this? And she's like, we're already doing that. It's so funny, because I'm just like, of course we are. Like,
right, right.
You know, so it helps, you know, to reassure that, you know, that there's this consistency for children. And when children are homeless, regardless of what the cause of that is, they lack consistency. And so any other way that we can find that and provide that to them, you know, growing up in a home where things are unpredictable because of the abuse that they're experiencing, again, anything that we can do to provide that consistency and the predictability, like Deb was talking about, is really critical. And there aren't, you know, I've worked in other parts of the state and worked with, you know, with other domestic violence programs, and there aren't a lot of kids programs like this, because our funding sources, this is, you know, backdoor stuff, but our funding sources don't always address the needs of children specifically. Yeah. So we have to get creative in funding these programs specifically. And we are fortunate to have some donors in the community and some local funding sources that support a lot of the work that we're doing within the kids program.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that they would fund the actual domestic violence services itself, but then taking it to the next level, which is being proactive, which is hard sometimes to fund proactive problems. We know that, we all know that, whatever the issue is, but I mean, that's just challenging. So let me ask you this. So you were talking about, so the kids who come into the safe house, this is what their program is. There's a lot of people and families that you serve that don't come into the safe house. So do they get these same kinds of services? Like if I have somebody who calls me in, you know, who lives in my area, who can't get into the safe house, but really needs some stuff for the kids, like can they access those services too?
Well, we don't have the staff capacity to provide community counseling to, you know, to just offer up. Like we do that for our adult victims,
right?
But for all of the children. So what I usually recommend is I will talk to parents and I will meet with them. But we usually recommend that they get the children into, you know, maybe a school-based counseling program where they can, you know, they can get some help in their, you know, in their own school. And I certainly will talk to the mothers and provide them with some suggestions. We just don't have the capacity to be able to offer that quite as in-depth as we do to our resident victims. And that's a funding issue and a staffing issue, you know, again. However, we do have our prevention education programs, which I'd like to just mention.
Sure.
That we do have programs that integrate a lot of our curriculum that we use, the trauma-informed curriculum with our safe house children. We do also offer in a form of a curriculum that elementary age children, for example, we have 16 total sessions that we can offer. So almost as many sessions or topics as we address in-house. And again, as I said, it's trauma-informed and it addresses the trauma. Also, it teaches the emotion regulation. So as Angela mentioned, it is that social emotional learning. We teach social skills, self-awareness and self-emotion regulation management strategies. So these are all integrated into our elementary curriculum. For our older children, the teens, we generally do single session, but we can offer a 10-session evidence-based program called Safe Dates that also addresses some of those emotional regulation issues and some of the social skills that are beneficial that we know by research help to reduce the incidence of violence in future relationships. So we do have those programs to offer, and we also even work with the colleges. So we do some work in the community. We'd always love to do more, but it really is a capacity issue. And we have wonderful volunteers who help us, so that helps us to expand our reach, and they do some of our programming in the community, as well as some of our staff, so that without them, we wouldn't be able to reach as many young people as we do. And on a typical non-COVID year, we're probably reaching about 1,500 children and teens in the community each year with our prevention programs.
And we'll be talking with Mike next week about that. I'm bringing another friend.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking, next week is going to be about like teen dating issues and those kinds of things. Yeah. I have to say, it's impressive. It's impressive to see that there are so many ways that you can access services to help. That's tremendous. And I think what's also really impressive, and I know most of us in the community are working on these things, to have that same common language about trauma-informed care. This goes a little bit beyond the scope of what our interview is, but that's for those people who are watching, you've heard a lot of people talk about trauma-informed care and about how, we've all had some issues in our life, and you have to address, it's not that you play a victim all the time. It's that you know that you have issues, and that sometimes you behave because of what those issues are, not because you're a bad person, because there have been things in your life, and that when you deal with people, you have to be thoughtful about those kinds of things all the time. And that's one of the things that I love, is that pretty much we're all using the same language to talk about the same stuff, so that when I hear trauma-informed care in one area, it's the same trauma-informed care conversations that I'm having in another area. So I gotta say, kudos to all of us for being really good at this now. I mean, there's always going to be room for improvement, but let's just say we know that this is going to be better because of your former boss, who's working for the state, who's doing this all over the state right now. So we are very excited for Dan's program. Very excited for that. Angela, I know you like to finish by making sure everybody's got all the numbers, all the phone calls, all the ways to text out information. So if you'd like to give us that would be delightful.
Sure. So anybody, victim, survivor, a significant other, someone who has someone in their life who's being abused, you can call our 24-hour hotline. We have specially trained counselors ready to take your call. The hotline number is 717-299-1249. And if you're not able to phone us, we do have a text line. You can text the word SAFE, S-A-F-E, to the number 61222. And we're there to answer those text messages and get that exchange going to help get you connected to the services that might support you. It's really important that everybody know that we're here for the community, regardless of where you live in Lancaster County, and that even people who have somebody in their life who they're trying to support and help, you can call and get suggestions on how to support and help that loved one in your life as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I love, is that, if you are trying to support somebody, you can make that phone call and get the same services to be able to support that person too. Yeah, that's truly fantastic. It's always a pleasure, Angela, and thank you very much, Deb, for this. This was wonderful. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you next week.